Good afternoon, folks. This is Carl, your ticker guy, coming at you with your September 24th update on the No Banker Left Behind bill, otherwise known as Fat Cats Get It All, You Bend Over. All right. We see quite a bit of opposition building to this in the House of Representatives, and I suggest that you get on your phones and you call the House and Senate again and keep doing so. No bill, folks. No bill. But let's talk about what else is going on in the markets today, because there are some kind of weird things happening. You'll see from the table that I have up here that there is a number here called total sloshing. This is known as the slosh report. It's a little piece of information that is out there to anybody that cares to look at it. And what it tells you is how much free liquidity is in the system, the banking system in the United States at any given point in time. You will see that it has been decreased intentionally by $125 billion in the last 4 days. Folks, this is under the direct control of Ben Bernanke and the New York Fed, Mr. Geithner. This is the free cash floating around in the system. Now, why has that slosh been decreased? Well, here is the next piece of information. This is the effective Fed funds rate. This is where it trades at. It's been trading about 50 basis points light to the official Fed funds target of 2% the last several days. You drain the slosh, and this is just like anything else in economics, folks, supply and demand. You take some money out of the system, and the interest rate tends to go up a little bit. Put some extra money in the system, the interest rate tends to go down a little bit. But when things get out of balance to the point that when you drain, it doesn't tend to have the desired effect, that means that the demand for credit is coming down, and as a result, the Federal Reserve will lower the target rate. See, now you just learned how they actually make interest rate decisions. This isn't what they tell you on TV, is it? But it's the truth. And in fact, if you go back and you look at the effective Fed funds target rate versus the actual Fed funds target, you will see that the market essentially always leads. Now, there are other indicators that we look at. One of them, one of the more important ones, is called the IRX, which is the 13-week T-bill. And that is a better predictor. That is also calling for a 50 basis point emergency rate cut right now. So we have the Fed funds rate trading 50 basis points below target. We have the IRX calling for an emergency 50 basis point rate reduction. And we have Ben Bernanke, instead of making a 50 basis point rate reduction, draining money out of the system, trying to prop the rate back up to 2%. Normally he would not do this. Why is he doing this? I don't have an answer to the question, but I'll tell you what, if he was to drop the Fed funds rate by 50 basis points tomorrow morning, the stock market would probably have a 300-point gain or day. And in fact, I put up a note on this a few days ago when people started noticing it on the forum, as well as myself, and said, watch out for an emergency rate cut because it is very likely to come as a result of this data. The cynic in me says that maybe Ben's draining the slosh instead of taking the rate down, because if you drain a swamp and there's dead bodies underneath, eventually as you take the water level down, something kind of ugly floats up to the surface. Maybe what floats up to the surface is a couple of banks. And then he has a great excuse for getting out there and saying, look, you got to give me my $700 billion. Now that's a cynical way of looking at it, folks. But I'll tell you what, the data don't lie, and the data says something funny's going on. I'm not quite sure exactly what it is. The House is getting it. I heard comments today in the House hearings about intentionally overpaying for securities in order to, quote-unquote, protect the banks. Yeah, they don't like that very much. That's a good thing. Thirdly, we need to make absolutely certain that American taxpayer money is not used in any sort of a rescue program. And really, folks, in this regard, we don't need to, okay? This $700 billion bail is just, there's just no point in doing it this way. Bill, I said bail, didn't I? Bill, bail, same difference, right? All right, let's go back to the basics and what we really need to do. We have the three-part plan to actually stabilize the credit markets and return trust. First is balance sheet transparency, 100%, including all level 3 assets and how you are marking them to the market. The second is to put all credit default swaps on a regulated exchange. That is very important. That gets rid of the credit default swap monster, snips the fuse on the bomb, and makes sure it never goes off. And third is force all institutions to take leverage down to no more than 12 to 1. In the case of the credit default swaps, we'll give you 90 days. In the case of the leverage, we'll give you 6 months. 1/6 has to come off every month in the case of leverage if you are levered up over 12 to 1. And this is all supervised. All right, so let's say we do those 3 things, and that's the bill that we actually report out of Congress. Well, does this fix everything? No, it doesn't. We are left with the fact that there is going to be a capital dearth. There are two independent problems. One is liquidity and the second is solvency. Solvency is basically your bust. All right. On the liquidity angle, we should have no problem with liquidity in these institutions that are illiquid but otherwise solvent once we take these three steps. The reason is anyone will be able to pick up a balance sheet and figure out that there is no solvency problem. The firm is a going concern and will remain one, and therefore there shouldn't be a problem with accessing liquidity. For those firms that are they're really insolvent. Okay, we're claiming they're illiquid, but the truth is they're broke, and we've been hiding it. This act is going to bring that to the forefront. We need to talk about how we solve that problem. There's a number of different ways to do it. The easiest is something like the RFC, which is a Depression-era organization that recapitalized a number of these banks. In most cases, I suspect private capital will come in once it understands the balance sheet and the risk. But in the event that we can't make that happen, then the next best step is, instead of what we are trying to do now, which is throwing $700 billion at the problem, we should force all of these firms through involuntary receivership. This will cause the bonds to take a small haircut, because in most cases, the bonds have plenty of cushion to make sure that the firm is able to actually meet its obligations. It will wipe out the stockholders in the common stock. That goes without saying. For those firms that are actually broke, that's what happens. You go broke, your stock is a zero. But it allows the firm to continue to operate normally. So the next morning when you get up, if your bank is one of the unfortunate ones that this happens to, your ATM card still works. This is very similar to the kind of procedure that the FDIC uses now. We take them in, we forcibly recapitalize them, and if we can, we sell them off at a discount to somebody. If that ends up being, whatever it is, if there is no discount available, well, listen, if the bondholders are totally wiped out, then they're totally wiped out, and it's bankrupt, and there are actual losses. But this is why bondholders buy bonds. There is risk associated with this, but in most cases, the losses in those bonds are going to be very small. We need to take this sort of a step because, as we put these firms through this process, we will find some where everything is a zero, and these firms are literally bankrupt. They have a negative net worth. Now, if that sort of situation arises, and there probably will be some, in that case, the government needs to step in and take care of those guaranteed things. For example, your FDIC bank account insurance. In the case of a broker-dealer, your SIPC insurance, if the firm has been illegally commingling funds, which they're not supposed to do, but it's possible that they have. In those situations, we need the government to step in and make people who are within those insured limits whole. For the most part, this plan will involve absolutely no taxpayer money. But there will be some that will end up being spent because there are probably going to be a few hundred banks that actually go under and are forced through recapitalization and reorganization. Many of those banks will be able to be reorganized with only a hit to the people that are invested in that individual bank. But for those that are not, we should be considering an RFC type of structure to handle that formal outlay that needs to come out of our Congress. In those cases, if there is upside available, the people need to get it back before the executives, the shareholders, or the bondholders get anything. After all, if we're going to put our money on the line, we're the ones who should benefit from it. If we pass the bill in its present form or anything like it, folks, none of these protections will be there. We will not use the free market to solve this problem. We will not fix the transparency problem. The $700 billion will go into a black hole. It will not fix the issue. And 3 months from now, we're going to be right back here with a much bigger crash than what we had in the last couple of weeks. You can bet on it. You can also bet that there are a lot of people that are running around tonight, probably including President Bush, who are going to try to scare you to death. Don't fall for it. There's a free market solution that involves limited, if any, taxpayer money, and it is what we should be going for. I'm Carl, and you should call Congress.